Hello again. I am author and internet entrepreneur Zachary Fenell, and with me today is my younger brother Nick.
Hello.
I do have an older brother as well. Maybe we'll get him on one of these videos in the upcoming months. But Nick's actually about to head out of state, leaving Ohio behind soon enough. So I wanted to get him. I wanted to get him on video and to let you guys talk a little bit about cerebral palsy and how that impacted our relationship as brothers. And mention Nick and Bill, our older brother, both in my cerebral palsy memoir, Off Balance. And one of the things I mentioned in Off Balance is every week I had a private physical therapist come to our house, and I had an hour therapy session. And I didn't like my brothers to have friends over at that time because at that time I was embarrassed about being different, and I didn't want other people to know I was different. I had to have physical therapy, so I didn't like when my brothers had people over. And so my first question to you, Nick, was that something that you were conscious of, that I had that dislike and I didn't want you guys to have those friends over during that time?
It's not something I'd say I was conscious of that for that reason. I knew every single week you had at the same time, the same day, the therapist came over. I knew that, and so I knew that that time was unavailable if I wanted to have a friend over. But because it was a routine and where it happened every week, I was conscious of that, and I knew that this is not when I could have a friend over. I can have a friend over any other time during the week. So, and that didn't
Yes.
bother me at all because you had something going on there, so that's okay. And then I could always have a friend over later or earlier in the week.
Very. So basically, you're saying it was just something that was set in the schedule, just like we ate dinner as a family around 5:30. It's just like Tuesdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Zach has therapy. You weren't conscious. You didn't really realize. Well, I didn't want you guys to have further, but you just kind of knew, like, not to, you just kind of like you don't have. You just it was in your ingrained that that time was blocked off.
Correct.
All right. And it's just as mentioned earlier, we both have an older brother named Bill, and I would just using Bill as a frame of reference, because as we in the disabled community would call people like you and Bill, you're able bodies because you don't have a disability. So keeping the fact that you've had both a brother cerebral palsy and me, and then an able-bodied brother and Bill, using that as comparison, would you say that my cerebral palsy played a role in how we bonded as brothers?
Um, I would say it's not something that I don't really think of that when I think of you. You're my brother. I don't really consider that a huge factor. I mean, we shared a room for how many years? So
So
that
many I lost count.
we're more similar in age than I am to Bill, so it makes that I think that those two things, our age and sharing a room and being in such close quarters, affected our friendship and brotherhood more so than anything else.
It's always a good point because as I said, as a middle child, I am not that, like, we're a year and a half apart, and then Bill is 2.5 years older than me, and so I am relatively close in that 2.5 years and year and a half. They're not that far apart for me, but I forget to look at it from your perspective of that would make Bill 4 years, I think, you're elder. So that's a little bit more of a jump. So that's a little bit more growing up, a little harder to to create that bond. And yes, we did share a room, so those are factors. And basically, what you're saying is I was just like any other sibling to you, as opposed to someone who you really, it wasn't something you consciously thought about. Oh, Zach has any kind of disability.
Correct.
And it's interesting because last year, and I've mentioned this I've done a YouTube video about it. I believe it was called Cerebral Palsy Beat Down, my first 5K. I did a blog post about it over at my blog. I'll put links up for both of those so you guys can check that out if you haven't already. Where there were people coming up to me after the 5K, volunteers of the 5K, who were just like, amazing job, so inspirational, this or that. And it was a very, so it was probably one of those first experiences we've had as brothers where the disability was kind of made out to be an issue, because it took me a while to finish, compared to everyone else. But for you, doing that 5K we did last summer, the Lakeview Cemetery Run Through History 5K, what were your, again, I talk about my perspective on it in that blog post, in that video, which I will leave links to in the video's description here. But what was your perspective? What was your takeaway? What stands out to you about that 5K we did last summer?
I think it was a great experience. I enjoyed that 5K. I think part of it was where it was. I think I'm very interested in cemeteries, and I think they're beautiful places. I'm very comfortable there. They're designed to be park-like settings. So I enjoyed it. Yes, I mean, it took us a little longer to finish it than other people, but we walked it too, and it was a beautiful area to walk and learn. There's so much history at the cemetery, especially Lakeview, that it was a great experience.
Yes, you mentioned that you're into cemetery, which is actually the reason why I was, asking you. I mean, that's one of the issues I deal with, and you're going to be dealing with soon enough. I mean, you take public transportation because you'll be moving out of state pretty soon. You won't have a car, and you're going to be going to college. And we'll get into that in just a second. But I wanted to get your master's. But we'll get into that in just a second. But what you said, I like, one of the things I always have to keep in mind is that I've had this interest in 5Ks for a while now, and it's just like, well, who else can I get to go with me or whatever, so I have the transportation. That's not the only reason I asked you. But when I saw the Lakeview Cemetery 5K, I'm like, Nick. I mean, he'll recreation. He'll have a rare afternoon off. He'll go spend it at a cemetery, and we'll get into a little bit more of that interest in a second, like I said. But that's why I asked her. I think why I asked you to do the 5. So it was like a combination of interest where I had that athletic interest in the 5K, you had the interest in the place it was actually at, and I think that is actually a lesson for any friendship or even brotherhood to flourish. Is you have to keep both people's interests in mind and kind of work together and coming up with events that will create happy memories for the both.
Agreed.
Yeah. The only regret I have about doing the 5K is after we finish is not having our picture taken together outside the finish line. But what can you do? Well, you're an artist. You could draw a picture for us eventually. Getting back to what I've referred to twice now in like the past 2 minutes or however long I've been talking, is you have that interest in death. And one of the things I think is a common, me and you are both dealing with in trying to educate and dispel misconceptions. I'm, as a disability advocate, it's always out there to try to dispel all the disability misconceptions out there. You are doing the same thing with death. Death in our society is viewed very taboo, and So and like you said, you have, like some people look at you, oh, that's a weird interest to have. You spend your your free afternoons in a cemetery, but you have a very like, why don't you talk about what why death fascinates you, uh what you hope to accomplish, and those misconceptions that you are trying to dispel about that that taboo subject of death.
Okay. We'll start with the similarities between you and I. As you mentioned, your videos, your blog posts, your memoir, and your writing often focuses on handicapable and changing how having a handicap or knowing someone with a handicap can be viewed, and looking at what is possible, not what is the limit. I, like you mentioned a little earlier, I'm going to study for my master's. I'm studying a very obscure subject, thanatology, thanatos being the Greek god of death, and then ology, the study of. So what brings me to interest in that is understanding that death is the only certainty in life after you're born. It's unfortunately the only thing we're guaranteed. So if you can recognize that as a limit, you can enjoy the finite time you have a little bit more. You can appreciate it a little bit more as well. I'm excited to go and study it because I think a lot of times people view it like very sketchy. They're not comfortable with it. But that's because of how our society has moved away from being comfortable with it. Long time ago, before it was so secular and a little bit more religious, the death was buried, or dead people were buried at religious institutions like a church. The church was in the center of the town, and they were forced to be confronted with death every single day. And then also, on top of that, family members would take care of the dying. The funeral director and the process of embalming, all that was created in the Civil War, or really popularized and created during the Civil War to help send fallen soldiers home to the family members. So up until that point, the family took care of the dead. So they were, even if it wasn't a level of comfort with it, they had a level of familiarity with it. So I think that really affects your life, and if you can look positively at that and appreciate that, it helps you live the finite time that you have your life a little better. You appreciate the things you have a little bit more, appreciate the time you have with the people you have, all the same, that much more, because you know death is what's going to come eventually. So you have all that time up until there to really enjoy and make do.
It's almost like right now a lot of people, they fear death because they don't understand it, and they don't want to die because they are so consumed by life. But it's when they accept that, hey, death is a reality that we all face, it allows them, it takes something off it takes a weight off, and they're able to enjoy life more. Would you say that would be accurate?
I think that's correct. I think we all have different ways of looking at death, but that's the way I look at it, and I think that it's a healthy way to look at it as well.
Oh yeah, and I think even there, in listening to Tuck, there's kind of like the same similarity. I wouldn't say I was fearful of my cerebral palsy growing up, but I was embarrassed about and fear can be seen as a negative emotion. So embarrassed, there's a negative emotion tied there. But as soon as I got over that negative emotion, the possibilities opened up, and there's just a level of embrace where you just live more fulfilled. You end up living a more fulfilling life. So I think that that's very interesting as we're talking. The more and more commonalities that come up, and I think it also illustrates that a lot of the issues and subjects that disabilities deal with, they really do extend to other topics too.
Agree.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining
Thank you
me.
for having me.
Well, it was a pleasure. I'm glad we were able to get this set. I know you're busy right now as you get ready for your big move. I want to wish you luck publicly out in Maryland. I know you're going to kick some butt. And all these people out there, they're saying they're shouting at their YouTube screens right now, "Congratulations, Nick, you're going to do well." And I will see you all later. I will see you sometime, not as often because you'll be out of state. And if you enjoy my videos, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll leave a button around here somewhere for you to check out. And again, thanks for joining us. I hope this was helpful. And maybe if you have a sibling with cerebral palsy, and there's anything that we talked about in this video that you can relate to, please feel free to leave a comment sharing your experiences. That's one of the things I really enjoy about making my life public, I guess, is getting to hear feedback from others and how my experiences relate to your experiences. So please leave those comments if you can relate to anything we said today, and take care.